Hey, hey, good morning to the Breakthrough interview series. I am Meg Smithson, a life coach focusing on relationship repair. And we built this platform to really break through the myth of overnight success. Anyone that I have on here has really had to go through the trenches. And so I really have a goal of letting you see what that looks like so that maybe if you've lost hope, you can be lent some of theirs as they tell you about the journey that they've gotten to where they are now. So today I have on someone super awesome and fun, known as the Mr. Personal Development Man,
Yeah, I'll take it.
Justin Rambo. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on, Meg. I'm excited to return the favor because you were on my show.
Yeah, it was so fun. And we met randomly through Facebook,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
always fun. So yeah.
yeah.
So
That's the
tell
power
me,
of like-minded individuals. Just because I was following someone that you had on, the messages aligned, and here we are.
yeah, we can't remember who it was, but
It was
yeah.
David.
Oh,
David, I believe.
it was David Gibson?
Yep, yep.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thanks, David. He's been on here, so he's been on here before, yeah. Okay, so tell them who you are and what you're about. Clearly, like personal development is a key piece of that, but you share that piece.
Yeah. So, as Meg said, my name is Justin Rambo. I'm a personal development coach and strategist, and for me, I live in upstate New York. Um, Husband, father of many, and just someone who loves to think outside the box, push the envelope, and go after, what's important, what's passionate, but also help others along that journey through the discovery of themselves. And we'll get into the other parts of it, but that's what I really love to do, is to pour into others and help them along their journey.
Yay. All right. So I know some of your past from doing my research, but this is the part that I truly think we don't talk about enough. And for people to really connect with you, I want them to see some of the trenches that you've outgrown, the things that you learned along the way, and some of those battles that you truly faced to get you to where you are now. So fill us in.
Yeah. So the two biggest battles that have predominantly been a major part of my life is, I'll give you the backstory. Growing up, right, I'm upstate New York, Henrietta, New York, or Rochester, New York, whatever you want to call it. I was, for the area I lived in, the premier athlete. And I was a good athlete from a very young age. So typically what comes with that is you get a lot of praise, you get away with a lot, and people just let you mess up, and it's okay, pat on the back, just play really good. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was fine. But along with that, there were two other things. So I'm a good athlete. I was terrible in school, right? So that's a common story with a lot of good athletes. I didn't really apply myself, and I had a really big temper. And so what I found was, okay, the sports side, that came easy. The reason why I was terrible in school is because I didn't apply myself, but I was so young. One particular incident was first grade.
Mm-hmm.
We learned to do math. We learned to, I think we were writing paragraphs, if I'm not mistaken. So
Mm-hmm.
before lunch, we would have to finish the math problems, right? 2 + 2, 3 + 2, things like that. But there were a bunch of problems. And
Mm-hmm.
then we'd have to finish our one paragraph before lunch. So that way, after lunch, we can go and come back to the classroom and have recess time. There were a lot of times where I couldn't have the recess time because I couldn't finish the work in time.
Me too.
Yeah. So
Me
here's what
too.
happens, right? In a kid's psyche in first grade, okay, everyone else is finishing their work in time and I can't. I must not be as smart. So that was strike
Mhm.
one.
Yep.
Strike two was, we had reading and math groups that, they formulated in class. Group one were the kids that really excelled in academics. Group two, your mid-level kids. Group three, kids that really struggle. I was in group three for both. And then the third strike was, we had an extra teacher that would come in the classroom and take certain kids out to help
Mhm.
them with math and reading. I was also in that group. So in my mind in first grade, I told myself, I'm stupid. I'm not as smart. I'm a good athlete, but I'm not as smart. So let me just focus on sports. Now, this is all subconscious, right? Because I'm in first
Right.
grade, but let me just focus on sports and, just get by in school. Now, remember, I was a good athlete. So I just got by. They let me get by. Along with that, the temper. So fast forward, first grade through 12th grade, my same story. Good athlete, not a good student, terrible temper, right? Since I wasn't a good student, I had a lot of college offers and I played football, but the recruiters are like, your grades are not good. So why don't you go to a junior college first?
Mm-hmm.
So after high school, I go to a junior college and same scenario. Good athlete, bad grades because I kept telling myself I'm not that smart. But here's the difference. When I went to junior college, it wasn't in my hometown. So I couldn't get away with everything.
Yeah.
What ended up happening was I pretty much flunked out, right? I stopped going the second semester and I ended up moving back home, had a daughter at an early age. So if you remember, good athlete, terrible student, temper. Now the athlete is dropped. So I don't feel smart and I have a temper. So that led to a lot of turmoil within myself, not really understanding myself, not really understanding how I operated, not really understanding the world around me or how I fit in, because in my mind, I was just a good athlete.
Yeah.
That was the identity I held on to because that made me feel good. But I also thought I wasn't smart enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so, long story short, I got a couple of jobs here and there. And this is in my early 20s. I had my daughter at an early age. And then I decided to go back to school. So now this is my second stint in college.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Same story. I'm not a good student. I'm not smart. I drop out. I ended up dropping out of college twice. So fast forward a couple more years. By this time, I have two daughters now, right? And my relationship with their mother is shattered. We're no longer together, but I'm going back to school now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm about 26 years old. By the time I finally graduate with my bachelor's degree during my third stint in college, so light bulbs turned on. If I apply myself and not listen to that story, I can do it. I just had to realize how I actually learned and how I operated. And I got past that point. But the story of the temper was still there. So now I had to deal with that. And for me, it took years because that was part of the issue with my previous relationship, right? She was temperamental and I was temperamental. We didn't know each other. We were young, right? And so it took years for me to really work on myself because, I graduated in 2011 at age 26. 2013, I opened my first business. It was a fitness studio, brick and mortar fitness studio. On the outside, everyone's like, "Oh, he opened up a fitness studio in the same hometown where I was a great athlete." So now I'm getting all the accolades and praise again. He has a business. Everyone can see it from the main street, and life looks good to everyone on the outside. But on the inside, I was dealing with the issues from my past relationship, not knowing myself, and the same, I guess, mental capacity I had at that time from before, meaning the temper and trying to, I guess, prove to people that I was not who they thought I was. I wasn't just the athlete. And so, that was a tough period. So from 2014 to 2018, I really started to go within to work on myself. And then, as we'll get into the story, but within that time period, I was able to work on myself, understand myself, heal certain things, and understand the past and why I thought the way I did, and how I realized that it was a crutch and how I can make myself better. And so what I realized was, okay, it's personal development. I'm growing as an individual because I'm working on myself. Subsequently enough, we're in 2021. My grandfather just passed away. And so we were at, they have food after the calling hours.
Right.
So all the kids were there, my kids. My wife was next to me, and my ex was next to her. Wow. And everyone was like, oh, like there's no argument. Everyone's getting along. Now, they hadn't seen us interact in years, but little did they know that by me healing myself years ago, it mended everything else between everyone else. And so for me, that's why personal development is so important, because it helps you escape some of those stories you tell yourself, or at least understand them and pivot and then go forward in life. So that's what I love to help people do.
Well, I think first off, that's beautiful. I love a good like battles story to see where you're at, because anyone that does anything amazing in this world has done it usually from a place of pain that they once
Hmm.
dealt with and tried to conquer, or before it conquered them. But I find it really interesting that all of those things happened as a result from the root from first grade.
Hmm.
And so, for all the teachers out there, for anyone in education, really listen to that too. The things that happen to you at a young age, whether you're a parent, a teacher, someone that is supposed to be leading children, those things can really, really, really impact you. I mean, I know for me, that's why I was like, yes, like saying it. My whole thing happened from first grade too. And it wasn't anything to do with my parents. It was literally the fact of feeling not worthy, because my recess was being taken away because I wasn't getting enough stuff done, because the perfectionist in me was like double checking everything. And so then I thought, oh, well, I'm not smart enough, or I have to work so much harder to get to this level. Now, I never was taken out like you were uh, in some of the like special classes where you
Hmm.
had additional help and stuff, but I was taken out for classes for like gifted and talented. It was kind of like a thing, but still, it was maybe the opposite, but you still felt different,
Yeah.
you know? But you're like, oh, why am I getting robbed of recess? Like, that's like every kid at a first grade age, like, that's like the trophy right there. So, um, I really find that interesting how much the first grade impact can really impact
Hmm.
where you're at, and even how it did with me too. So, okay, big question. What was the first glimpse of personal development, or who was the person that gave you that gateway entrance drug of personal development? Was it something that you listened to? Was it a book? What was it?
So there are actually two things. So the first thing was just an action, and I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back on it, this is what happened. So when I decided to go back to school the third time, I was working a part-time job in a fairly affluent area,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the only African American in the area. I had my hat on, I had my earrings in still, but I realized they didn't judge me, and through that job, I was able to get promotions, and I was well known. And I realized that it was my work ethic, but also how I presented myself,
Mm-hmm.
not as the athlete anymore, but as someone who's trying to be more, someone who's willing to go out and do things, someone who's willing to help others, to serve others, and be in front of people and try new things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when the gears started shifting in my head, meaning if I actually apply myself, because when I was an athlete, I was a good athlete, but I didn't really try. So I didn't
Right.
know what the extra effort was. But the main thing was in 2014, there was a guy who used to be homeless. And he was homeless. He was in prison in Paris for like 2 years, even though he's an American. So there's a lot of issues there. And now he's a multimillionaire. And so at the time, 2014, like I said, I opened my business late 2013. I heard him that he was going to speak. So I was looking for the lessons and tips and tools of how to make a lot of money, like how
Mm-hmm.
to become a millionaire.
Right.
The entire speech, he didn't mention money once, but he kept talking about personal development, self awareness, growing within yourself, knowing yourself, understanding yourself. And so the term personal development kept ringing in my ears. So when I came back from the seminar, I'm thinking, okay, well, like, how do I access personal development? Do I go to a vending machine and put some money in or something? I didn't know how to access it. And little by little, I started going on YouTube, listening to motivational speeches, inspirational speeches, personal development, reading certain books. And that was my own journey into personal development until I formulated a process that works for me in
Mm-hmm.
terms of growth. And so, like I said, 2014 was when I first heard it. But when I had that part time job, which was 3 years earlier, that's when I actually started doing the actions, not realizing I was doing the actions.
Right. So, how did you get through the anger? If you had this crazy rage of anger, which you and I've talked outside of this, thinking of the Enneagram, I'm pretty sure you're an eight. And one of the backbones of that particular number is anger. So,
Yeah.
so how did you move through that? I mean, I know personal development was part of it, but how did you transition into that? Because there's probably people out there dealing with the same thing and they don't know how to get out of their own way.
Yeah, it's funny you ask because my younger cousin was just asking me about it. When I say younger, it's 2 years younger. He was just asking me because he saw me at the funeral. He's like, you've changed over the years. Like what? How'd you get over it? Because he's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, a couple of things. The first thing was to look over my life in an action format, like a bird's eye view. So
Mm-hmm.
that I did that through journaling, and it helped me pinpoint certain things. And so part of the issue I realized stemmed from my relationship with my father. It wasn't a bad relationship. My parents are still married. He's a great man. He's still in the household, but there were some things that I didn't feel like I was able to tap into with him. The
Mm-hmm.
emotional part of it, the quality time, but also not being able to voice my own opinion in
Mm-hmm.
the household because that generation, he's a military man, so what I say goes.
Yep.
So I had to realize throughout the majority of my life, I was perpetuating my anger based on the view of a little child who didn't feel like they can talk. And
Mm-hmm.
so that didn't mean that I needed to put that in every situation going forward. And so the second thing I realized is I was always reacting before thinking. And so we mentioned the DISC assessment on mine. So I'm a high D and a high C, right? So a high D is more direct, driven, like that type of personality. They just want to take action, make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a high C, which is more the cautious, analytical type, like to process things. So the majority of my life, right? I'm an athlete. So this is how this stuff ties in together. I'm an athlete. What do you do in sports? You take action. You respond to certain things. So that's how my mind was wired. So I'm just responding through life without thinking. And that usually landed me in trouble. So as I gotten older, I realized I didn't like those outcomes. Instead of just going from 0 to 60, let me take a split second to think
Yep.
how I want the outcome to come out. And so if there's a certain situation, how do I want that outcome? And if I know how I want the outcome, then I know what I need to do in between. So we have the situation here, we have the outcome on the other side. In between is the thinking part. What should I do? And so for me, I started to realize instead of using my high D trait first, I needed to use my high C trait first
Mm-hmm.
because I needed to think about it first. I needed to analyze the situation and then make a decision. What
Yeah.
I realized through that process was that was my superpower. I just used things the wrong way for a long time. And
Yep.
so I was able to get through it that way. Now, it's not to say that like you just completely get rid of it, but you manage it and you know how to process things now. And the more you do it, the more it feels better. It's like a dopamine hit. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to make sure that you keep doing it. You don't want to go back to what you were doing before. So those are the two main ways I processed it. And the two main ways I managed it and helped me to go forward.
And I think too, like you went from instead of going from the default method of just straight up reaction, like that's what you were doing. You're reacting. That's
Oh
like
yeah.
your jerk. Like let's just go. When you paused and you went into I think you said the I.
C.
See.
Yeah.
When you went into the scene, you could actually think. You were then able to respond in
Hmm.
the way that you were intentionally trying to do versus out of that knee jerk reaction. And I think what's really neat too, and maybe you can dive into this more, is from that, how much of your life did you get back? Because you weren't recovering from the rage of the reaction that you were in default mode with. But how much more, I mean, I'm sure that people naturally follow you now because you can command a room, you can command people that work with you, you can command an audience because you have control over that, which used to take you over.
Yeah. That's a good question. And so I'm going to try to answer it in two ways and make the most sense possible. But so just follow me along with this one.
I got you.
All right. So even with my temper, I would
Mhm.
still get the same reaction. People would still follow me, but the outcome wasn't what I wanted. And the
Mhm.
feeling wasn't what I wanted. So
Yeah.
what I realized is a lot of the things that we think are negative about ourselves or what people tell us are negative. So my temper. Everyone knew I had a temper. I knew I had a temper. So I'm trying to I'm looking at it as okay, I just get angry. Not looking deep enough within it. Not from the stance of okay, the reason I get angry is because X, Y, and Z. It's okay, what within that can I focus on?
Mhm.
So the way I move, I don't know if you can see my hands, but I move and talk with my body a lot. I'm
Mhm.
moving my hands a lot. I make facial gestures when I talk. That grabs people's attention because it's charismatic. It's the same thing I did when I had a temper. So I had
Mhm.
to realize there's a gift within that negative. I just needed to pull that gift out and refocus it and put it into something positive.
Mhm.
So that negative that I just lumped as a whole as just a temper, there's some things within everyone, right? For instance, my sister was always told that she marches to the beat of her own drum, right? She's not like everyone else, and she should do this and she should do that because that's normal. And I
Mhm.
said, that's your gift. You're you. And there's a lot of people that need to understand that. And so within every negative, there's a lot of positives. So you just
Mhm.
have to extract the positives or refocus that energy into something else. So when I'm used to get angry, I'm giving off energy.
Mhm.
And it was negative energy, but how can I take that energy and put it into something positive and still capture the room and capture everyone's attention? It's the same thing I'm doing now. But one thing I did get back is time. And what I mean by that is the focus is no longer spent on things that I couldn't control or the things that I was upset about. The focus is spent on the positivity, the motivation, the family, the growing, the growth. So now I'm getting time back, which is, something you can't really get back, but the focus of the time or the focus within the time is
Mhm.
what I've found that I've gotten back. But also the intrinsic value and the intrinsic feeling of the outcome from not getting upset is
Mhm.
something that I found that I get more of. And so
Mhm.
those are the two things that um, I find that I've gotten from not getting upset and not getting angry and going forward.
No, absolutely. It's about taming,
Hmm.
about being aware of where you're at, what your struggles are. In my terminology, it's self-sabotage. Where are you
Hmm.
standing in your own way? And how do I redirect that? Or how can I catch it and move through it faster, thus getting your time back?
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
have
gonna
a quick
ask
story
this.
real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, I don't know, this just came to me, but about 5 or 6 years ago, my old high school called me to
Mm-hmm.
talk to kids who were good athletes and
Mm-hmm.
terrible students.
Mm-hmm.
I said, how'd you guys like contact, like, how did you know what I was doing?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, some of your teachers have been following you and
Oh.
they've seen the change and they've seen the growth. And so I talked to the kids in the auditorium. It was my first time and it was cool. And they all came up after and they were talking to me because they still saw my name in the plaques from sports on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm giving them life advice now. And so after we're done, I go out into the hallway and I run into my math teacher from 10th grade. I start talking to him and he goes, now, short side note, I had him for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, this is the most you've talked to me in this 5 minutes compared to the 3 years that I had you. What changed?
Mm-hmm.
But he knew something changed because of social media, but he asked me specifically what changed. And so when it comes to getting over something like a temper or whatever the case is, you have to stack those small wins to give you fuel to keep going because that shows you that you're heading in the right direction. So if you can remember those things, it also helps you go forward.
Yes. So true. That's funny that he's like, who are you?
Yeah, it's different.
More now? Okay, so a little bit of a selfish question because we're kind of talking about like how you like break up with the bully, the inner bully, which has been big time just becoming aware of your patterns and trying to break through that insanity cycle. And you talked about the disc assessment for you. And you and I have also talked about it because I use something a little bit different. But to use like self sabotage in the mix, I want you to talk about because you thought you knew what mine were, and I've taken the test and I can't remember. I don't know. For some reason, with the disc, I always forget what mine are.
Yeah.
But you talked about how there's your superpower pretty much, and then you also have the downfall. So, when for the people out there that know the Enneagram, he's probably an 8, and he reverts to a 5 when he's in stress mode. And also when you're in a good place, you're a people or you're a peacemaker. You let to make the people around
Mhm.
you just feel awesome and all these different things. But when you get in stress mode, you revert to a 5 that's very analytical and has to think of every little step and all these little things. And again, the backbone of the behavior that you have to tame is the anger. So I want you to talk what you had said before with me, what you thought my disc was, because I want people to hear that my downfall is part of the self-sabotage that is a continual thing that I have to work with. It's just not as hard anymore as what it once was.
Yeah. So I don't remember specifically what I said, but I do remember saying that I think you're more of a high I, where there's a lot more emotion there. There's a
Yes.
lot more of you're more how can I say, people oriented,
Yep.
because there's a task oriented side and there's a people oriented side. I happen to be more task oriented, which is why sometimes I may come off as harsh, or I don't care as much, or I'm not as empathetic, but I'm more just task oriented. But you're also more of a, if you're high I, more of an extrovert. So if I can break it down into quadrants, right? We have a cross section. You have the D and the I at the top. The
Mhm.
D is an extrovert, but it's task oriented. The I is an extrovert, but it's people oriented. And you have the C and the S on the bottom. The C is introverted, task oriented, and then you have the S, which is a people person, introverted. So I float between introvert and extrovert, right?
Mhm.
And so if you're an I, you're more of an extrovert, people oriented. So that's great because the I's are individuals like Will Smith. He can light up a room. People just naturally gravitate towards those individuals.
Mhm.
Two parts of the downside is they may be look at me, look at me, look at me, and it rubs people the wrong way. Or they may be, I'm going to pour into you. I'm going to keep pouring into you. And that's great, unless it's the wrong person. They just burn you out. And so
Yeah.
you'll find yourself being burned out by individuals or not having the reciprocation of the same energy coming back into you. And you find that you overextend yourself to individuals at certain times. And so I think that's the balance of when to keep pouring and when to keep pulling it back for a lot of individuals, in terms of if you're a high I on the disc assessment. And so that's what I would say, because you're all four, everyone's all four letters. There's just higher, degrees. So I would say your primary, if you took it, would be a high I. And I can tell even just, by our interactions and how, you type and all those things. And so the cool thing about knowing yourself and taking the ideogram or the disc assessment and understanding it is you start to understand other individuals' language.
Mhm.
And so now it's not left up to interpretation and your misinterpretation of what they're trying to say or the type of energy. So,
Mhm.
for instance, if I talked to another high D in the past, I didn't know I was a high D. I thought they were just being rude, but they're just task oriented, straight to the point, bullet facts.
Mhm.
So they're not thinking about it in terms of I'm going to hurt your feelings. It's like, what's the easiest way to go score a touchdown, straight line, instead of zigzags or instead of going diagonal. So they just want to get to the point. Where high eyes, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of passion. So in the past, I used to say, okay, I'm going to slide over here because it might be a little bit too much for me. But they just love people. And then you have someone who's an S, which my brother's an S, and for years, and the S is more, they like the stability and they don't really like to go too fast, go too slow. So if there's a job, they want to stay in that job for a long time. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to go out and start anything new.
Mhm.
I would try to get him, hey, why don't you start this business? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? Oh yeah, sounds great. But he would never do anything. So that would cause an issue sometimes, in my mind, at least. Why aren't you trying to do anything with your life? Well, he's a high S. He likes that stability, which is fine. So now knowing that, I can understand his mindset without trying to, paint a picture of what I want him to be, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And it actually helps my relationship too with my wife. She's a high I. So,
Okay. What?
and
Wait.
so,
What's the C?
so the C is cautious, right? So the C is the more analytical, the process driven. They want to
Mhm.
make sure that they have all the facts first. And the C is great because they can do all that, but it's also their downfall is they take too long to take action, or they never take action because they overanalyze.
Mhm. No, I love stuff like this. Like I said, this is like more where you like to dig in and to do that. Everybody that coaches like has their own thing. Like I said, I am like
Mm-hmm.
obsessed with the Enneagram, whatever you want to say. But something that's so fun that I bet this is you is so for a D, since you're so task oriented, something that's beautiful about that is you don't let a lot of the distractions and sometimes even the attachment to emotions drive your decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of like you're able to compartmentalize. I feel like if I'm
Mm-hmm.
right, this is
Yep.
the way he is, and the Enneagram. That is how my husband is. He is so good. Like I feel like I look up to him in that way because I'm such an I or I'm such a 3 that I really attach to emotions and I really wear my heart on my sleeve and I just
Hmm.
love people. So when there's feelings and stuff involved, then I have to try to move through that. And it's so hard because it doesn't even affect him. Probably like it doesn't affect you as much. You're just like, why are you getting attached to this? This isn't even really happening. You've made it up in your
Yeah.
head and you're preparing for it. So it's just interesting how, like you said, the way that we're oriented can have a downfall too. Because
Hmm.
for me, that could become a time waster where I'm preparing for a worst case scenario with a possible client or a person or an opportunity or whatever because I'm too emotionally attached to it. So I have to learn to get into like the 8 mode or to the D mode, like you guys are.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is
There's
not
downfalls to
appropriate.
a D too. So don't let them fool you.
What'd you say?
There's
What?
downfalls to a D as well. So don't let it fool you.
Well, yeah, his is the same way. It's like being a 5 when you overanalyze everything. I'm more like, let's just go. Let's
Yeah.
go. We don't need to think about all that. Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And you said a key word. You said, I can compartmentalize, but not get as distracted from things, right? And so,
Mhm.
literally, as you said that, where's it? My book is called "Turn on the Noise." It's about eliminating distractions. And so, at the time, I didn't realize I was a D, and that's what I was doing in that book.
Mhm. See, guys, he's an author too, and a podcast host, and a coach.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that's like the perfect segue into who you're becoming. And so the big piece to that for all the people listening that's really important to me is we're never going to just arrive at our highest self. We're not going to one day just get them and be like, like it's a continual thing. So personal development is a continual thing. Showing up every single day is a continual thing. So if you can just get 1% better than you were yesterday, which is like a cliche thing to say, but it's true. When you look back next year at where you were at the starting point, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, we think it has to be all these huge, ginormous changes every single day, but it's the little consistency that no one wants to do that adds up and compounds like crazy. So, talk about that a little bit, like, because that's part of who you're becoming and who you're leading to become more in charge of their mind and body and soul and all that.
Yeah. So, who I'm becoming, I've never been asked that question, but I like it. So, I will start with the end in mind, is what I always do. I start with the end part of it and
Mhm.
backtrack. So, when all is said and done, I want it to be said that, you know, I was someone who helped individuals tap into who they truly are. But
Mhm.
within that, because I use personal development just a little bit different than what some people use it,
Mhm.
but someone who helps people tap into who they are, within tapping into who they are, they find their true superpowers, their real strengths, and they
Mhm.
use that to push their life forward, whether it's in business, whether it's personal, family, whatever that is, but utilizing that to go forward, because it's in my mind that when there's a lack of progress in one's life, it's like physical purgatory. And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of people stress out. And that's where a lot of people are, my life is not going right. I don't know what to do next. And they're trying all these different things and they're trying to like someone else has done it, but that's not really who they are. And it's not their strength. So they feel like they're a failure because it's not working. But the whole time, they never tapped into who they are. So I have these 4 letters that I go by, not the DISC assessment, but this one is F for foundation, S for strength, G for goals, and T for traits. Right.
Mhm.
And so that goes in sequence. You have your foundation. Within your foundation of who you are, you find your strengths, you
Mhm.
utilize your strengths or superpowers to set some goals. And because those goals lead to actions, now you're no longer in the physical purgatory. And then the traits is like what traits you need to wrap it all up, which is the glue that binds everything. And you just keep going with those letters. And so the person I'm becoming is the person and the entity and whatever you want to call it, the brand that people can tap into to find those resources within personal development. Because if you remember, when I learned about personal development in my story, I didn't know what to do.
Yep.
And that was a big hurdle for me. What
Mhm.
to do, where to go to. There's so much information. So I want to be, I'm becoming that person where people can tap into because I have online courses, I have information. It's not just me pushing out videos and saying certain things, or I mean, I'm not talking bad about anyone, but not saying the same thing that everyone else is saying.
Right.
My message is a lot of times a little bit different, but I want to be and have those resources for anyone to tap into in terms of personal development and growing and progressing in life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think this is the perfect time to talk about this. Is you talked about being able to basically show people their strengths. And I know that that is such a huge area that people struggle with. It doesn't matter what age you are. It could be
Mhm.
right out of high school. It could be 70 plus years old, trying to start a new life or whatever that is. Or especially people that have raised their kids and now are empty nesters and they want to do something else, explore something, but they don't know what it is they're good at. Having someone work with you as a coach or have a course or have a podcast or something like you have all of those to shed light on those is going to allow you to tap in and see what it is, because we're so close to our superpower that we don't even know it's a superpower.
We've
And
been doing it for so long. It's
yeah,
just, it's natural to us.
as soon as someone can help shed light on that, you don't take it for granted anymore, because that's what happens. We aren't tapping into it because we're taking it for granted. We don't realize what our superpower is because we're in it every single day.
Yes.
But when someone can actually like, hey, do you know how amazing you are at this? Like, I really struggle in this area. So whether or not it's you're good at numbers, whether or not it's good at sports, whether or not it's you're good at analyzing everything or leading people, everything can be a strength. But when you keep focusing on what everybody else is doing and trying to fit into that cookie cutter versus staying in your lane and having someone coach you to keep your eyes focused, especially someone that is good already with keeping the noise down.
Right. I like that plug. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So with this and who you're becoming and who you're trying to reach, what would you like to offer people so they can either follow you or do all the things? Like, what do you want to give them?
Yeah. So first thing is you can follow me on Instagram at Facebook. It's Mr.personal.development. So you can follow me there. But next Thursday, which is May 6th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm hosting a free training. And this training is going to show you how to get to your foundation of who you are. It's going to show you how to identify your strengths and how to use those strengths to tie in a 30-day goal, because you want to make sure that something is measurable, and you want to make sure that you don't overextend what you really want to do, because if you reach your 30-day goal, that's the momentum. I'm on the right track. Let's keep going. And so I'm holding that free training Thursday, May 6th, 7 p.m. So you can go right to my website. Is www.versatilesuccess.com and get registered for that free training. And yeah, so the company is Versatile Success. I don't know if I said it.
No, I can see it.
Yeah, Versatile Success. And so yeah, that's where you can find me, and that's what I want to plug in, and what I'm doing for a lot of people. It's helped so many individuals. So it's basically my journey and how I discovered myself. I wanted to see if my process would work for other people, turn it into a program, led the program for months. It worked for other people, turned it into a course. It's working for other people, turned it into trainings. It's working for people. So did I say it's working for people?
It's working. For
Okay, it's working for people. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Guys, he's looking for people that are stuck. And that is one of the 7 areas of self-sabotage that I talk about. If you're stuck and you don't know what you're doing and where to go, lean into somebody that can help you. It's an SOS right here. So join him, follow him, do all the things, pull his website up. He has courses. I was on his podcast. I already cannot remember what episode it was. Was it
106, I want to say?
106. Okay, 106. So listen to our podcast there. And do you have any final last words?
Yeah.
Before you link?
Right. So my last words are: if you're someone who feels lost, you're someone who feels stuck, if you're someone who feels like you lack clarity, you're not sure what to do next in life, you're not sure who you are, you're not sure how you fit in life, you already have the answers. And this is what my book is about. You have the answers. We're just too distracted to see it. We're just too distracted to hear it. And so that's why my book is called Turn on the Noise, is because once you realize who you truly are and what you have inside you, then you can go forward. But if you're listening to everyone else, if you're following everything else, you're distracted. So if you're someone who's lacking that clarity, you're not sure what to do next, take some time, schedule it out to get by yourself, journal, pray, whatever you want to do, meditate, and those answers start coming to you.
Yes.
So instead of being stuck and being lost and not knowing what to do and thinking that you're a failure, you're not a failure. You maybe just need to shift to a different lane. You're just not sure yet, but you're not a failure. You're not necessarily someone who can't get right or can't get it right. You just have to find yourself. And once you find yourself, sky's the limit.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for taking time out and coming on. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We'll connect with you. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right, guys, go check them out. And until next time, look for your breakthrough. Bye.